We are kicking off the Now Morning Show with a difference this morning. We're talking about the Tobago Initiative Caravan. It's making its moves in Tobago right now, but what does this mean for the people, the economy, and even the world? Raucous is about to find out on your Spotlight.
The initiative in question this morning is the Breadfruit Initiative, and I want to welcome the chairman of the Tobago Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program, Mr. Barry Lovelace. Good morning to you, Mr. Lovelace.
Good morning, Raucous. And
Thank you so much.
Good morning to the wonderful folk at TTT there.
Of course,
and
thank
Trinidad
you so
and
much.
Tobago, especially Tobago.
Especially Tobago. How is Tobago this morning?
Especially Tobago.
How is Tobago this morning?
Well, it's a little overcast. I'm looking out there. The ground is wet. My area all over the island, but the sun is willing to peep out at some point.
All right, so I want you to give us a brief overview of the Tobago Breadfruit Initiative. What is it all about and why was it started?
Right, well, you made mention of the organization I'm representing this morning. Well, for short, we'll call it Tobago Reforestation, right? You give the long name. And well, this company is a non-profit company that was registered in 2020 by the Tobago House of Assembly, and it's under the division of food security, natural resources, the environment, and sustainable development. From henceforth, I'll just say the division of food security, right? And well, we have a mandate, so to speak, of, well, if you were to generalize it, is that of increasing forest capital in Tobago. Right? And when we talk about forest capital, we're talking about activities such as reforestation, forest conservation, looking at denuded areas, replanting trees, that sort of thing, fire prevention, watershed management. But in 2020, an aspect of planting trees was kind of emphasized, and that is in the agroforestry area, right? Agroforestry and socio-economic development. So those are two areas that we are, in terms of our strategic direction, we are now looking to, emphasize a whole lot more. Now, it's a new company, right? It would have been just registered in 2020. It has some history though. The genesis of this company has some history, right? Way back in 2004, there was the National Reforestation, right? And then we're coming forward to 2012, right? The Tobago House of Assembly would have taken on the full responsibility for the program. It would have had its ups and downs and so on. And well, as I said, 2020, it now was formed into a non-profit corporation, and we have a fresh mandate, right? So our vision, I want to say, is forests that feed, well, let me repeat that, forests that feed, heal, inspire, and transform lives infinitely, right? So that is our, and so our mission now is to contribute to Tobago's self-sufficiency through forestry, agroforestry, watershed management, climate action, and social enterprise, right? So to break it down to common balance, we are all about planting trees, forest trees, as well as food trees. And that's where the conversation of breadfruit comes into play. Mind you, we are not just about breadfruit, right? We also have our eyes on things like cocoa, avocado, soursop, and this kind of thing. But we're talking breadfruit this morning. And that project is a cherished one of mine, really, right? What we call the Tobago Breadfruit Initiative, right? And so that's what we're talking this morning. Now, why breadfruit? Why the focus on breadfruit? Well, I'd want to put it into a little context in terms of what is happening, globally and affecting us locally, right? And I call it the context of 6 C's, right? Crisis of climate change, COVID, conflict, and right?
I didn't get
There's
the
a
last.
crisis.
I didn't get the last C. Was it last C?
I'll repeat it. Crisis of climate change,
Right.
COVID, conflict,
Right.
and cost,
Cost.
increasing costs.
Very
Yes,
important one. Yes. Go ahead.
yes. Yeah, because very relevant to what even, Now, pre-2019, right, we only used to talk mostly about climate change, among other things, right? But going into 2020, 2021, we experienced COVID, right? And that would have affected us in various ways, in terms of what we're discussing, the supply chain in terms of food that was disrupted, farmers in those the bread basket areas of the world, they couldn't bring their produce to market, and so because of the lockdowns and so we had that. But coming out of 2021, the restrictions and so started to relax across the globe somewhat. But then this new thing happened where we have the conflict, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, right? And as we know by now, right, that area of the world there, in fact, together, Ukraine and Russia together, right, is responsible for as much as 30% of the wheat production globally, right? So with them fighting there now, that affects us. In fact, it affects the world in a serious way in terms of food shortage, right? And so we now beginning to feel the pinch. Cost of food rising, and it will continue, right? According to the experts. Fuel is surging, right? Energy prices, right? And so we're feeling the effects, right? And I even suspect that the crest of this wave has not fully reached us yet. So it is in this context that we are talking about this Breadfruit initiative for Tobago with some sort of urgency, because we as a small island, we don't have the luxury of time, to start from scratch and so on, right? So there's some urgency to this thing. And we feel if we're talking about measures of self-sufficiency for a small island in that context, we feel that breadfruit, right, is one of the commodities that offers or contributes to that objective of self-sufficiency, of food security, or I'd even go as far to say food sovereignty, right? So we need to organize quickly, right? And so that's what's ahead of us.
All right.
And
so we're saying that we want to use breadfruit to replace some of the items that are on the market now. So you want to replace the wheat and the flour products with breadfruit products, right? So in order to do that,
Yes.
we're going to have to increase the amount of production of breadfruit, which would be planting more trees, growing more breadfruit trees, yeah?
Right. But I wouldn't quite say replace, but substitute to a great extent, or complement.
Complement.
Not to substitute, complement.
All right, complement.
But,
cool.
Yes, but I mean, breadfruit, the potential of breadfruit is wonderful. In fact, our approach to it, we're looking at a 3-phase project, whereby in this first phase, one of the main things we want to do is heighten the public's awareness as to the potential of breadfruit, right? As a foundation food, so to speak, right? And on the first instance, and then in terms of, well, you make mention of a revenue generator, in terms of downstream processes like flour and so forth. Now that's a higher order discussion that we can get into, and markets and so on. But my primary thing, in terms of the basic common sense thing, is one of food security, having sufficient food to feed ourselves, right?
Okay.
And when you check the, yes.
No, you go ahead. When you check
Yes, I was saying, when you look at the characteristics of this food, this staple, this wonderful staple, in fact, it's beginning to be referred as a superfood, right? It's superior to rice. It's superior to potatoes. As a matter of fact, anything potato can do, breadfruit can do it, and better, right? You understand?
All right. I want to get back to the 3-phase initiative you're saying, right? The 3 phases of it. So the first phase is public awareness. So now we need to know more about what Breadfruit can do. You just gave us a little taste. You're saying basically, in a nutshell, anything potato could do, breadfruit could do and do it better. What's the second phase?
Man, the more I research this thing, I am beginning to call it local manna, right? Right? Because if you check it in terms of its nutritive, well, first, I'll say it's very versatile as an ingredient, right? So we want to encourage people experimenting and using it in their culinary preparations and so on. Now, we don't have to start from scratch. There are other states, right, even right here in the Caribbean, who are ahead of us in that game in terms of incorporating breadfruit into their cuisine and so on and so on. We could learn. We want to partner with them, and we touch on that, some of our partners and so on, if time permits, right? But there's that. In Tobago here, right, we would have started with what you call a breadfruit, Tobago Breadfruit Initiative Caravan, or TBI Caravan, right? And what that is about, well, one of our partners, breadfruittrees.com, they would have gifted us some trees in the earlies, right? So we took those trees, mature trees, and we began contacting each one of the assemblymen, the 15 assemblymen around Tobago, and doing symbolic plantings in various constituencies. Now, it would have started with the launch of that program, that caravan. It would have started in March. I can't remember the exact date, but in March. And we planted a tree at the Botanical Gardens, right?
Okay.
And that would have been planted by the Secretary for Food Security. Thereafter, the chief secretary, Mr. Pali Augustine, he led by planting one of the trees at his residence. Okay. And thereafter, we had other secretaries come on board, Signal Hill, that's Mr. Tate. We went to...
Tell me something, Mr. Lovelace. How long does it take for a breadfruit tree to start producing actual fruit?
Well, it depends on the variety and other conditions, but I guess the most important factor is the variety, right? Now, the local breadfruit that we have here, we have two general ones that we refer to as the yellow breadfruit and the white breadfruit, right? Those generally would take about 5 years to come to fruition, right?
Okay.
But there's another variety that we want to promote. It's called Ma'afala variety.
Right.
That takes a shorter time. It starts bearing around year 3, right? So 3 years, and the characteristics of that particular variety, I mean, it has a more bushy growth. It doesn't grow especially if you trim it and so, it doesn't grow as tall as the others. The others too, if you trim them, you can get them controlled in terms of the height, right? But that Ma'afala, it has certain characteristics that we think is advantageous, but the height one, so you don't have to, exert too much effort in terms of harvesting the breadfruit.
Right.
In terms of the number of fruits that it bears per season, per year, put it that way, right? And it's less seasonal than the other types, right? So you can have it growing, if you strategize well, you can have it growing year round.
Okay.
Right? So we're looking at that one to promote, and so we're working along with other partners to try to get that going, right?
All right, nice. So you're saying that the 3 phases of the initiative, first part is getting to everybody to be more aware of it. The second part is planting trees. And the third part? Right.
Yes. Right. So that second phase now is where, of course, in the first phase, we'd have already established relationships with our partners, who supplying, who planting and so on. And so in that second phase, we want to organize the industry somewhat, right? In terms of, putting the infrastructure in place, who planting in large, on large holdings, that supply chain in terms of where they're getting the plants from, make sure the supply is always up, right?
So you're talking about partnering with farmers, right?
Yes, farmers in the first instance, and also other organizations who are interested in, encouraging the industry by supplying plants and so on, right? Okay. In fact, I could, I'd want to mention some of them, some of the main stakeholders that we see. For example,
if you do so, If you do so, you have to, let's just do it quickly because we're almost out of time this morning, unfortunately.
Ooh, already.
Because this is a big conversation.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Right, we have TADCO,
Right.
right? That's the Tobago agro development company, forestry, agriculture, environment, tourism. So those are some of the state partners. Then we have NGOs such as external. The Tree That Feeds Foundation is a key partner. I mentioned breadfruittrees.com already. Right. The Bridge Foundation, right? And well, the Bridge Foundation, they are part of a tree planting project, right? In partnership with I think it's plant roots, they call them, right? So we're working along with them as well. The ministry in Trinidad of Agriculture.
All right. This sounds fantastic. Mr. Lovelace, I want us to check in again so that we can get
Yeah, you have to call me back, man. I only talk a third of what all right.
All right. So I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning. And please continue the good work that you're doing. And we're looking forward to seeing that transformation of Breadfruit across the island.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah? Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, you too.
And that is Barry Lovelace, the chairman of the Tobago Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program, just chatting with us about breadfruit and how they plan to use the Tobago Breadfruit Initiative to introduce breadfruit in a more wide-scale version to the island and, of course, to the country of Trinidad and Tobago. We take a quick break and we come back with more inside in our morning show. Stay tuned.